Good morning and happy Saturday. For those of you that are new, welcome. And for those of you that are returning, welcome back to the Torque and Thrust Talk Show, episode number 20, Blanket or Charger. My name is Bill. I have been an airline pilot for the past 7 years, hold 5 FAA type ratings, and currently fly the Boeing 737 for a major U.S. airline. My co-host is fellow co-founder of the Three Green Simulations Group, retired NYC EMT and flight sim extraordinaire Tommy D of Level Flight Simulations. On this week's show, we are talking about the mandatory airline pilot retirement age, gaming news, and the new 2024 F-150. Then we'll learn industry terms with jargon in a jiffy, learn from past accidents with our new segment Safety Stand Down, live listener Q&A, and our discussion this week, Blanket or Charger. What are the most important items to take on a road trip? But first up, Tommy D, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. We've been talking. Tommy and I always catch up in the pre-show. It has not been too bad. I've been home. Well, actually, no. I take that back. The beginning of the week kind of sucked. So I made it. I made it to work. I forgot about that. I just completely brain dumped that. I made it to work, which was great. I had a great trip, a wonderful captain. We seem to always be on the front side of the weather, which was phenomenal, which is something that doesn't normally happen. For example, our last flight going into Chicago O'Hare on the last day, we were the last ones in. Everybody behind us started holding on the way in, so we lucked out and we were the last ones to get in. But that's when the hit the fan. All the flights going home started canceling or delaying. I could see the writing on the wall. So I had a just tough decision to make. Do I sit and try to make my last flights out? And if they get canceled, get stuck paying like $400 a night for a hotel in O'Hare because all the rooms are filling up? Or do I rent a car for a fraction of that price and drive the 8 hours home? And that's what I did. I
Yep.
spent $150, got a one-way rental, drove 8 hours from Chicago home through the night. I didn't get home until 3 a.m. And my wife's birthday was this weekend or yesterday, so I wanted to make sure I was home. And it worked, but I was exhausted. Like Tommy's like, "Are you still awake?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just got home. It's 3 a.m." I drove through the night. That was wild. So that kind of sucked. But yesterday was my wife's birthday. We had an absolutely wonderful day. Got a lot of stuff done. We painted some pottery. And by painted, my wife created this amazing coffee mug. And I got a cool coffee mug with a dragon handle, but it looks like a 6-year-old painted it. I tried my best. I can't really do. I can do graphic design. I can act. I can speak. Obviously, we do the podcast, but in terms of art, I've never really been good at it. My middle school art teacher, the one class that I took, said he's the only person that he's ever seen in his years of teaching art at a middle school in El Paso, Texas, that has worked so hard, put it so much effort, and improved nada, not even to the next level. He's like, you never improved. Literally got an A for effort in that class. But that's it because I suck at art. So they're getting fired right now. We'll pick it up in a week. We'll go from there. Also, I was talking to Tommy. I do have my hat my name in the hat to upgrade at my airline to captain. The seniority has finally gotten to the point where I think it'd be beneficial and also good quality of life to upgrade. Don't know yet. The actual vacancy bidding closes on May 14th, and that's when I'll know whether or not I'll be upgrading to captain and officially regain my status as Captain Bill official. So that may be our next adventure. We'll see. But Tommy, how about you? You probably had a more eventful week than or a less eventful week than I did, hopefully.
It was a lot of adulting around the house. We're researching moving south within the next couple years, and then a whirlwind, like common knowledge that I'm transferring to a new launch building that's much
Right.
closer to my house. Right,
Yeah.
there is so much involved because I've been doing nothing but training for the past week and a half because it's a different business model. And I'm
It's different.
going,
Yeah.
yeah, totally different. And I'm going to a site that's 2.5 times the size the site that I'm in now. So
You're in a big one now, aren't you? I thought it was
we're
pretty big.
750,000 square feet.
That's big, and it's double that.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
So I'm going from about 120 people on the shift
Hmm.
to about four and a quarter.
That's gonna be double the
So
fun, double the size, double the fun.
yeah, Yeah. So, um, I finish out May 22nd is my last day at my current site.
Okay.
On vacation, we go south, and then June 3rd, I go to another site an hour away that's roughly the same size, but the
Hmm.
right business model so I can learn the procedures. And I go there till the 29th, and then
Wait, of May 29th or June
June
29th?
June 29th.
Man, Tommy's upgrading too. Look at that.
Yep,
Holy
yep.
crap.
And after that, I go to the new site and I sit and watch the construction guys. Because even though we
Oh, is
launch,
that what you're doing?
yeah,
Yeah,
even though we launch, there are 2 launches, the soft launch and the hard launch, so I'll be there for both.
gotcha.
Soft launch, you just kinda sit around and watch everybody, you get policies in place and things like that.
Yeah.
Hard launch is when that first trailer comes.
Which is funny because by that time, who knows? You may be moving down to Georgia. You may be transferring to another
Right,
facility
and
down in
just getting
Georgia.
right back on the one app and bingo.
That's amazing. Is it that simple? Is it just a matter of just putting in the transfer paperwork?
Yeah, that's it. And
Yeah.
literally, if my job classification is open, wherever it is in the
You can
globe
just
I
go.
wanna go. Like,
Dude, that's
literally, I could
awesome.
worldwide transfer.
That's awesome. So
Yeah,
Tommy and I were
it's a
talking
nice
about
little
this in the
perk.
pre-show. Yeah, Tommy and I were just talking about this in the pre-show. It's just how things suddenly just like start not looking up but changing. So yesterday too, I realized I only had 2 more car payments on my 7-year-old Cruise, my FO car that I've had, and I looked at my wife. I'm like, wait, why are we just sitting here with 2 payments? Let's just pay it off. Like compared to what you know, what I mean, let's just get it over with because I was gonna. It's either wait till July or just pay it off. So we paid it off, which was amazing. Um, we paid it off. Now I was just telling Tommy, now I'm in my truck era, right? I'm trying to look at trucks, and so now I got car salesman messaging me on my phone. I forgot that when you check availability, it's literally you send your information to the dealership.
Like
So
a
they're
text message floodgate.
yeah, they're hounding me now, which is good. That means they're trying to sell the car, which is good. And also I forgot to mention I'm going to get a my third tattoo today. Something that's sentimental to me. I showed Tommy the design that I designed myself, but a lot of things just happening, and also with the upgrade too. So it's just a lot of or possible upgrade in the future. Just a lot of interesting things happening this week, good and bad. That's the first time in like 5 years I had to drive from O'Hare to home. So that was a pleasant experience, but I wouldn't want to do it regularly. It's
Yeah,
about
because there I
eight
am,
hours,
like, a normal night for me at work, and
and
I
there's
would get
Bill.
text from Bill when the, talk to text in the rent-a-car would decide to work,
Oh my god, that thing was
right?
stupid.
So finally, it was, uh, probably 2:30 in the morning my time, and I was just about ready to take lunch, and I'm like, "Dude, you still alive?"
Like,
Like,
yeah, I'm just my biggest thing is just outside of I can't remember which city it was. I was trying to find a gas station, and I was trying to do it old school using the signs, right? But
mhm.
like you get off, and then it would tell you like to drive 5 miles down a dark road. I was still in my pilot uniform, so I'm not getting out at some sketchy gas station in the middle of the night in my uniform. You know what I mean? To get
I don't
gas.
blame you.
So I kept going. It was about an hour span of me getting off, going, no, no, it's not on the highway. Drive back on, and then the next exit. It was a whole. I was getting frustrated at 2 a.m. in the morning. But, anyways, I digress.
Well,
So that was my week, and ironically, that is what we're going to be talking about a little bit later about road tripping and what we think are the most important items to bring with us on a road trip. So it kind of fits the theme, I guess, for this week. So,
it does,
but
it does.
but first, we're going to talk a little bit about aviation news. It's a kind of very short headline, and I'm going to keep Tommy up on this because I want his take on it. So the big news this week for aviation, we're not doing aviation history this week because we're starting to do the safety stand down, which includes history. So I don't want to overload you all with history. I know there's some people like me that would love it, but I'm just trying to keep it even keel. So the history stuff is going to be moving to the safety stand down portion of this. But the big headline for this week in aviation news is that the Senate passes the FAA authorization bill without the increase in retirement age for airline pilots. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The witch is dead. Age 67 and 364 days is finally dead, and we can talk about it because it was kind of, if you're an airline pilot, it is controversial because you have people who were for the age increase and then people that weren't for it. And so I never really talked about it on the talk show because of the polarizing effect it had. But now that it is officially done, like I said, ding dong, the witch is dead. The witch is dead. Then we can talk about it. We can finally talk about it. So my personal viewpoint on, like I said, it's not a huge headline. It's not. There's not a whole lot to talk about. The FAA authorization bill just allowed more funding to help increase staffing and recruitment. I guess incentives for air traffic controllers. But the big part of that bill that was like the most important to my side of things was the age 67 bill. The original language in the bill had it extending your mandatory retirement age, which is currently 65, has had it extending to 67 years and 364 days, so essentially 68 years old. But the worst part is that they were going to allow pilots who had retired that were still under the age of 60, well, let's call it 68, to come back to the airline without a seniority hit. They were going to allow them to retroactively come out of retirement and sit at the top of the seniority list. And they would be limited to only domestic flying, so they couldn't do the overseas flying and stuff like that. There were some limitations to it, but ultimately it was basically reactivating retired pilots to sit on top of the seniority list, which as a junior pilot, not junior right now, but if I do get the upgrade to captain on this next bid, I'll be a junior captain. That's the last thing I want. Everything in the aviation industry, especially where it's seniority, like at the airlines, it's all about movement, right? If you want to move up as quickly as you can, you want to see a constant rate of movement. We're seeing that now because of the massive amount of retirements, because of the baby boomers that are finally starting to retire. But imagine that massive amount, like thousands of retirements, hits pause for 2 years. Plus, you throw all the people who are like 67 and 360 days back onto the line on top of that list. You're talking about 3 years of stagnation with a possibly rolling backwards thousands of numbers in terms of seniority because of the retroactive activation. That is 100% why I was against it. Like I said, that was my personal opinion. I flew with varying opinions. Like I had one captain tell me that this was primarily the reason why I didn't want it. Was not only seniority, is I flew with a captain once that said he had some surgeries that he'd like to get done, and then he would go on long-term disability until he retired. So he wanted the ability to be on long-term disability for an extra 3 years and get paid the extra 3 years without working. There was the other side that wanted it to help staff. That was the main idea originally, is by increasing the retirement age, you retain the pilots and you don't have a pilot shortage per se for staffing. But ultimately, I didn't want it because because of the seniority wise, it would screw everybody on the bottom of the seniority list with stagnation. And if anybody tells you, 2 years of stagnation isn't that bad, tell them about the pandemic. That was 2 years of seniority stagnation. I experienced that firsthand, and it sucked. I mean, I was lucky because I was a senior captain at Envoy when I got stuck, but it's senior, no matter where you are, just stagnation sucks because you're not going anywhere. But the other part, too, was just the taking advantage of not working. If the intent of the bill was for it to help with staffing, pilots going out on long-term disability an extra 3 years doesn't help the issue. So that's why I was also getting. It's from the feedback that I was hearing from multiple pilots across the industry, not just my company, is a majority of people are going to take advantage of the financial benefits of being on long-term disability versus you know what I mean? So that's where my problem was, is they didn't want to work. But from the general public, from someone who's an aviation enthusiast, Tommy, but not necessarily an airline pilot, what was your thought on the age 67 bill? Did you, in terms of increasing it, because it was 60, and then I think in 2008, maybe 2000, somewhere around there, they increased it to 65, and that's what it's been as long as I can remember in my aviation career.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's a good thing.
okay.
Listen, you have a good, fruitful career. When you want to retire, you want to retire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then say I was 60 years old and they passed that. Now you're going to tack essentially another 3 years onto my career? No. You
Well,
know,
it's not
walk away
a
with that.
mandatory thing. You could still walk away with it. It's the option to work an extra 3 years.
Yeah, but to work that extra 3 years, let's face it, you're getting older, you're getting slower. Even guys who are in great condition, eventually everybody slows down.
Yeah.
Health,
And that's
you
Yeah, and that
know.
was the argument. I heard that argument too about health, but I am not 65, so I couldn't tell you. Like I always tell people, ask me when I'm 65, and I'll let you know how I feel. I love flying, but I'm not the type of pilot that comes. And I know pilots like this, where you go home, and then all they do is fly at home. They have their own little GA airplane that they putz around in. I don't do that. I go home and disconnect from the industry. That's just I love flying, but I guess not to that extent. So I think by the time age 65 comes around, I think I will be okay with stepping away from the airline
Yeah,
and just
walking
enjoying
away.
life,
You
because
know,
a majority of my career is away from home. I did a TikTok probably almost a year ago now, where I calculated all the different times, cumulative times. At the time, I think I had been an airline pilot for 5 or probably 6 years, and of those 6 years, I was on the road 5 years, and cumulatively on the home like a year or something like that. And of that much, only about 6 months of like flight time. If you took all my flight time and divided by 24 hours, it only accumulated to like 3 or 4 months of actual flight time. Like if I were to fly
mhm.
continuously, it was only 3 or 4 months of actual work.
That's a
So
pretty wild ratio too.
it is. So like by the time I hit 65, you can imagine that was at age 60 or at 6 or 5 to 6 years. Multiply that by like 12ish, 13, and so that's what that ratio is going to be. I would have to make up for some lost time once I turn 65.
Right, and
So
then you think about it, now I didn't have that situation. See, my pension
mhm.
compared to yours was cake.
Yeah,
When I first started, it was 20 and out.
that's
Done,
it. Yep.
done. Because that's the same thing. That's what was awarded by union contract, 20 and out.
Yeah. Hmm.
Now, 25 years, age 55, the son has to be at the 212 position, like all these different restrictions that are put in the pension. I mean,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have had the patience to deal with the level of pension that the city has now. No way.
Yeah.
But, and that's what I feel. I walked away after 32 years, three different states. I had a great career, and I lose zero sleep knowing that I'm not going back to that life.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people too is aviation is so much of their lives that they don't know what they would do without it. Other people have bills to pay. I hate to say that. Not everybody not everybody is financially responsible even though they make a lot of money. Just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you have a lot of money. So I think people are kind of hitting, and a lot of people argue too. Well, those are the guys that had two furloughs, went through 2001 recession, COVID, and they're trying to make up for lost wages. But I mean, you're making so much money at that point. Like the super senior guys that'd be around for that, you're making so much money at that point. Like I don't know if you can make it up, especially with the way inflation and costs are going nowadays. But
No, not
that's a
with the
different.
restrictions.
Yeah, no, there's no, and like 401k, we're capped at I think 23 for contribution. So at a certain point, you're throwing that into a health retirement fund, or HRA. I think is where ours goes after we cap our 401k. So like, I don't understand the financial gains, but like I said, the one or two arguments that I've heard were more for personal gain, not for the betterment of the industry.
And there is that small percentage, I'm sure.
Yeah,
That
and there's more, and I'm pretty sure you don't see junior people saying, "Oh yeah, age 67." It's mostly the senior rank and file that do that. Which, to each their own. Everybody has their own opinion. I am just glad that it's nixed. It's done, because I know there was a lot of people who were pushing for it, because it's like I said, it's. I guess it sucks for the people that want to fly for 3 more years, but for a young pilot like me, everybody tells me, "Oh, you're gonna have a good career. You're gonna have 30 years." But yeah, if I have 35 more years, but then I have to sit there for 3 years at the same level and with the same, quality of life, because they decided to retroactively hire retirement pilots that had already retired, that's not my choice. That was forced upon me. You
mhm.
know what I mean? It's almost like the same thing of like furloughs. Like furloughs are an unfortunate part of the industry, but it's part of it. It's what happens in the airline industry. It's something going into it. So like I said, I'm just happy. That's why I was singing "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead," because finally this is over. It's been up since, God, age 67 has been a talk since I started with my current airline, and it just wouldn't stop. And like I said, it's polarizing. You get pilots that are 100% for it, and then you get the extreme other side where they're 100% against it. And like I said, if it had gone through, I wouldn't have complained. It goes through. You deal with it. It's like furloughs, but I was really hoping it didn't go through. So I'm glad it didn't.
Yeah, I don't
No,
blame you.
yeah. But that's like I said, was more of a discussion topic about news today. It's a very short, very sweet headline. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Tommy. He's going to be talking. He has actually a lot of gaming news to talk about, don't you, Tommy? Today,
I
a
do got quite a
variety
few
of gaming
things,
news.
yeah.
To the point where in the intro I said gaming news because I didn't know how to summarize it. It's a variety of news. So you'll see the ticker tape updating as we go. But without further ado, Tommy, you can take it away.
Thanks. So, here we are a little bit past the first quarter of 2024. And I was doing my little fishing around the IGN, found the top two best rated games thus far of 2024. And it's not what a lot of people would think, at least not games that I would play. Not my thing. Final Fantasy VII, Rebirth, and Tekken 8. Now, I remember when Tekken first released, when that was a brand new cutting edge game. And it's been around a while, and so is Final Fantasy. And I always just kind of like laugh about it. Like, hey, um, why is it Final Fantasy if you're on 7 Rebirth? Because Final Fantasy, it suggests that's it. It's final. Done. But whatever. Hey, if you guys are the type that enjoy those games, have at it. But they do say that right now these are the top games. Now I only listed the top two. They did give the top five, but the guy was just too tall. It wasn't actually a news article, it was a video. And the dude spoke even faster than I do. Modern Warfare, Helldivers 2 was on there. Modern Warfare wasn't on there. Starfield, any of the games that we've discussed on this program weren't even a glint in the eye. They didn't even come within the top 50. Modern Warfare, for those of us who are fans of it, know why. I don't really know too much about Helldivers. I've recently gotten into Hell Let Loose, and I'm enjoying that one. The second piece that I'm going to go for is LVFR for you flight sim enthusiasts. Released at A340. I believe it's a 400 series, somewhere along the lines. I don't know too much about it. I just know it was an anticipated release by LVFR. As we all know, I'm not really an Airbus guy. I do tinker around with them, but that's about as far as it goes. Microsoft Flight Simulator System Update 15. Here is yet another delay to what is supposedly the last system update for the year for the simulator. Now, I was talking to one of our friends, Otto. Some of the issues that he had found out was Xbox users for the sim. It's causing stuttering, lag, and crashing to desktop issues, if you will. And at this point, this is about 3 months that, well, maybe 2 months that system update 15 has been pushed off. Guys, if you're watching, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Stop pushing the limits of this system update 15. There are a couple programs out there that are going to rely on it, and I understand that. But, you know, is it worth updating and making hundreds of thousands of people that play on the Xbox platform pretty much not able to play it? Because from what I was reading, system, SU15 will make it unplayable if they don't fix all these bugs. And the time and money that they're pouring into it, I'm not too sure what the cost ratios are, but it's getting to be a little bit much. Because I used to be in the beta for all the updates. And when I got the beta of the SU15, took me 27 hours to get my simulator back to where it was. I had to do a complete reinstall and everything. So appreciate that, Microsoft Flight Sim guys. Think about that in the future because I have no problems going right over to X-Plane 12. So, and lastly, those of us reading the buzz on the internet about the PMDG 777, the 300 is going to release in a few weeks. The final touches have been released. They're in beta, and it's very, very evident what they're doing. There are a lot of developers out there right now that are releasing early release aircraft, and more things will come online. Well, I have the Flight Sim Studios 175s and the 190s. I'm still waiting for BNAV. I don't mind doing the math to tell me when I got to descend, but it is nice just pushing the button so I could go get a cup of coffee. Uh, Rounding it all off this morning, guys, if you're Xbox based, please don't be too eager to get that system update 15. You can go on YouTube, you could go on IGN, you could go on a lot of different networks and read what's going on with that. Um, Me personally, just my humble opinion, I really, really do not think this is going to be worth it, especially the headaches that it had caused me when the beta first came out for the PC based and the Windows Store based. So again, just my humble opinion, but that's going to wrap it up today with us for the spectrum of gaming news.
Okay, well, that's all. Did you? I may have missed it. What is the official release date of that PMDG 777?
They will not say yet. Randazzo
So,
has not said a word about it yet.
so did they say? You said a couple weeks. So where was
That's it.
that?
That was the official PMDG update. We're within a couple weeks.
Oh, love it. What? God, love it. I love it. Nothing like anticipate. It's kind of like GTA 5. It's like or GTA 6. We're just like, okay, can you give us a hard date? Like, give us something to look forward to.
Right. Give us
Um,
something a little bit more concrete because I mean there are legitimately probably hundreds of thousands of simmers waiting on this aircraft.
Yeah, waiting for it to come out. Yeah, I don't blame them because PMDG produces such a great product. So we're looking forward to seeing that. But thanks, Tommy, for doing some auto. I'm sorry for the gaming news. Like I said, a ton of gaming news updates this one. And now, ironically, I'll be talking a little bit about some automotive news, and we're going to talk about the 2024 Ford F-150. Now, as I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, I did just pay off my car. I am looking at trucks. But the 2024 F-150 is something of a little bit of an upgrade compared to the 2023. As the 2023, it was still kind of old school, monochrome, infotainment display, small. It was just an older version of the 23, but the newer version or the 2024 has some updates, and I just want to go over that with you as well. So there was a couple things like a facelift with new grills, lights, and badging. So the badge is no longer the gray; it's like the bright white, so it stands out more. Everything comes with the standard new grill design. That's they call it coast to coast. So from right to left, it's this big grill that covers everything, and it's dark, so it contrasts a lot of the colors that the vehicle comes in. The new 2024 comes with a new turbocharged 2.7 liter V6 versus the old base V6 engine, which is good because the turbocharging just means it gets more power out of the same size engine, which is great for the towing capability of the pickup truck. Also, 2026 MPG is what they're forecasting for the gas mileage. That's going to be 20 in city, 26 on highway, which is actually pretty decent for a pickup truck. And the way they do that is rather than have a V8 sucking fuel to give you the same amount of like torque and payload capacity for when you're towing stuff, they're using the turbocharger to take the V6 and produce the same amount of power as a V8 with a more fuel efficient engine, which is, I like that. The new Fords have Blue Cruise hand-free driving available at higher trims, XLT and up. So Blue Cruise is kind of like Tesla Autopilot or Nav Pilot, whatever they called it. Blue Cruise is actually a hands-free driving system where if you're on specific roads that are mapped out by Ford, you can actually sit there with your hands off the wheel and it drives. I personally wouldn't feel comfortable doing that just because even when the airplane is flying on autopilot while we're doing approach something, I'm always guarding the controls, kind of the same thing. But it has really advanced technology where there's like a camera facing the driver. It monitors the driver to make sure they're not falling asleep or making sure that they're still paying attention and monitoring traffic while the Blue Cruise is on. So there is safety features built in there to make sure that the driver is still being attentive, not like reading a book or something like that. So basically, you can sit there and watch it drive, but you still have to be an attentive driver in order for the system to work. The one downside, and I really hate Ford for doing this, is that system, while it's really cool, in order to get updates about the map and the system and stuff like that, you have to pay a subscription of $75 a month or $800 yearly to use that. Now, when you do buy your Ford truck, you get like the XLT models and up, you do get you usually get like I think it's like 3 months or a 90-day trial, but after that you do have to pay the $75 a month, which doesn't, like, if your XLT has like adaptive cruise control and stuff like that, which is still smart cruise control, it's just not hands free. Then you can still use that without the subscription. But if you want to use Blue Cruise, their new feature, then you do have to pay an extra $800 a year or $75 a month to use it, which I think is stupid. Subscription-based safety handling on a car or equipment on a car should be safe or should be part of the purchase and come with the lifespan. This whole subscription thing, when it comes to anything, is just a way for companies to have a regular stream of revenue. So if I don't think I'm going to get an XLT level trim or higher, but if I did, I'd just probably let it expire. But anyway, so that is something that is included with the new 2024 heads-up displays and now standard 12-inch infotainment display. So that is a huge difference and something that's drawing me more towards an F-150 than any other truck. The 2023 version still had the smaller, I believe it was like a 3 or 4, maybe 4 to 7-inch infotainment display, and then you had analog dials and a monochrome digital speedometer in the middle. It looked very Frankensteinish. It was a older technology placed with newer technology. Didn't quite fit. It made the cab feel really outdated. But now standard with the 2024 Ford F-150s, all the trims now have standard 12-inch infotainment and a fully digital cluster behind the steering wheel, which I think is awesome. Also, something that is beneficial for Ford is there's lots of trims to choose from. So you have your base, which is your work truck at XL. You have the STX, which is basically a appearance package that is thrown on the XL. It's a great budget level vehicle at S. It's a little bit more expensive, but XLT is where you're gonna get all your bells and whistles. They got the trimmer, Lariat, King Ranch Platinum, and Platinum Plus as well. Whereas other truck companies, they don't have as many trim levels for you to choose from. The prices that I saw range from $39,000 to $85,000. You know, $39,000 being the base. $39,000 is not too bad for a truck, but as we've seen with inflation and such, everything is expensive nowadays. The trucks that I was looking at is probably around like the 47 to 48,000 mark, and that's still getting high end expensive for me. But if you want the Platinum Plus Ford F-150 for 2024, it's going to be push you around $85,000. Standard warranty, pretty much 3 years, 36,000 miles, bumper to bumper, and a 5 year, 60,000 powertrain, bumper to bumper. So nothing really to write home about with that. I think most competitor or most car companies are kind of leaning back to the standard. I still think the best one is Hyundai with the 100,000 mile. I think it's 5 years, 100,000 mile warranty on all their vehicles. But that is it for the specs. I'm going to bring Tommy in here in a second to talk about that because we've been talking trucks for a while now. Some interesting facelifts to the 2024 for the price, but not everything is, like I said, is free or included. So Tommy, first of all, I want to know what you think about that. Blue Cruise is what they call it for Ford, where it's basically hands-free autopilot like Tesla had, but they're going to charge you $800 a year for it.
I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
Isn't it? Like
corporate America ridiculous.
I just dropped how much money on an XLT, which is XLT should probably be anywhere from like $55,000 to $60,000, and you're gonna make me drop another $800 a year and it's not all roads. It's on certain map roads that are deemed safe or have, you know what I mean, to have updated markings and stuff like that allows the smart cruise control to do its thing. It's right. The Blue Cruise to do its thing. So it's not like all over the United States. It's only on specific roads, and it's a subscription.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
But that's what everything is. I mean, we can probably discuss it on another podcast, but that's what everything is. Everything is a freaking subscription nowadays. Like, you can't go anywhere. Like, for example, if I just want to watch my St. Louis Cardinals, it's like a $300 subscription a year to watch it, and that doesn't guarantee all the games, right?
Right.
They don't. And
I want to watch the Rangers. I had to get Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN2, and I get half of the games.
Yeah, exactly. So I hate this subscription nonsense. Like, if I buy a $60,000 truck, it should come with Blue Cruise, and it should, for the span of the loan, let's just say that, span of the loan that I plan to pay on it, should have that service included. Like, I understand like OnStar and stuff like that, and even Ford Pass. I think there's a monthly fee to be able to use it from your like start your car from your phone and stuff. But like, come on, like it's $75 a month is not cheap.
Right, on top of a car payment for a price that's really inflated anyway.
Yep, but the thing is, here's the thing, is people are gonna buy it, and that's the problem. Is people are gonna pay the $800 a year, the $75 a month to keep it going, which I think is absolutely absurd. Like I said, if I don't think I'm most likely gonna be looking at an STX model, which is the base model with lipstick on it, because I'm not a bougie person. I don't need, it'd be nice to have push to start, but it has, like, realistically, the STX, what it doesn't have that the XLT has all the comfort features, so like heated seats and stuff like that. It has the keyless entry, But with push to start versus the key, I personally prefer to have the key, so that way I don't accidentally leave my keys in my car and somebody can drive off with it. I prefer to have like a start. And plus, like I was telling you in the pre-show, Tommy, I'd rather have the phone app where I can start my car as I'm coming out from my commute to get it warmed up or cooled off. That's really all I need in terms of smart. And cruise control, this STX has dumb cruise control, so the standard, you set the speed and stuff, which is all I need. My current sedan, my Chevy Cruze, doesn't have cruise control, and I've driven the 8 hours from Chicago with that thing without cruise control. So all I want is cruise control on this next
Yeah,
car that I'm
that's
getting.
it. That's
That's
it.
all I need. So you're not really sacrificing a whole lot to go down to the STX level versus the XLT. It's just the difference between the two is the price. There's a huge price difference, almost by about $10,000 between the XLT and the STX. But overall, right now, according to Car and Driver, I believe Edmunds too, the F-150 2024 is ranking number one this year for the pickup truck to get because it has great power. The Super Crew has great comfort. So it's all around a great truck. That's why I'm looking at it. So, with that being said, unless Tommy has anything he wants to add to the
Nah, I
automotive,
just
no.
yeah, no.
Yeah. We're going to switch to our favorite segment of the show. We're going to be doing some jargon in a jiffy. So for those of you that are new, jargon in a jiffy, if this thing ever shows up, there it is. It takes like 30 seconds. But jargon in a jiffy is a word game that Tommy and I play where we each come up with a word from our industry, tell the other host the word and then the sentence, and it's up to the other host to try to guess what the word or term means. This is primarily to introduce you all to terms from our industry so they're not so intimidating or daunting when you finally do become a airline pilot or a medical professional like Tommy D. So without further ado, Tommy D, I'm going to let you take this one away. What is your word for this week?
So my word for this week is homeostasis. Homeostasis.
Uh-huh.
You and I are sitting here right now in homeostasis.
Homeostasis is a state of equilibrium.
It is. It is the
Yep.
body at its normal resting position.
Position. Yep. I one thing that I like paid attention to biology. By the way, biology was my worst class in high school. I hated that class. I don't know if it was the teacher or if it was the content, but
It was my teacher. I assure you of that
yeah,
one.
it was probably my teacher. But yeah, so homeostasis, homeo meaning the same, right?
Mhm.
And then stasis meaning static. It's also Latin, knowing word roots. Good job, Tommy. That's a good one though. Like if
That
I
was a
had
pretty
no,
quick guess. That was pretty good. I thought you would
well,
have
as
thought
soon
at
as
least a couple minutes on that one.
no, well, no, you said when you said homeostasis, it took me a second, but like because I knew, like I said, I know the word roots, and I was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, if it's equilibrium, but like you said, resting state, so that's a good one. Now this one is not as complimented. This one actually sounds like a 3-year-old compared to homeostasis. But my word is squat switch. Squat switch. So one of the things that I used to test on the Piper Seminole on a walk around would be the squat switch. Wait, that's a terrible sentence. Hold on. The squat switch is a safety measure to ensure. Nope, that would give it away. Hold on. Sorry, my sentence is not as strong as I'm trying to formulate a sentence that won't give away what I'm talking about. A squat switch is a proximity sensor. Nope. I don't know if I can come up with a sentence for this thing without
You know
giving
what?
it
With all
away.
those combined sentences, let me take a whack at it.
Okay, go for it. Sorry, I can't. That's
So right off the top of my mind, I don't think this is it, but this is what popped into my head first. Is it something that like helps settle the aircraft?
not quite. It kind of has to do with settling. Where would you say the switch is?
I would think it would be on. I've never heard of a switch like that on an instrument panel. I would think it's somewhere in the landing gear.
Okay, you're right. It is at the landing gear.
You know, is
So
it
so you're right. You said something about it settling, right?
mhm.
So when it settles, where is it? Is it in terms of its flight? Is it airborne? Is it on the ground? If it's is it landing?
I think it would
Where
be
would it?
landing and on the ground, like a landing and
Okay, so
taxiing and
an
parking.
airplane would squat on the ground, basically, right?
Yeah, because it's
Okay,
for the most part it's
so
still so.
landing gear on the ground. What is the worst possible thing you can do with landing gear on the ground? We're talking retractable landing gear, obviously.
Retract it while you're on the ground. Mistakenly
Oh,
retract it. So
so
this
the
is
squat switch,
keeps you from doing that.
correct. I'm sorry.
There
I
you
don't
go.
know why I had the sentence in front of me, and when I read it, it doesn't make sense when I read it out. It made sense on when I wrote it down on
I
my
can't
iPad,
tell
but
you how many times I've done that since we started this show.
yeah, I
I would
started
look
reading
at
it.
my
It's
little
like,
paper and be like, I got such a butt kicking, sentence about this. And then you look at it and be like, oh, my grandchildren can figure this out.
yeah. So squat switch is basically a proximity sensor. It varies between airplanes, but anything with retractable gear has it. When it's activated, um, it basically prevents you from when it's the circuit's closed. If you go up with the gear, you'll get the horn, but it won't actually
Nothing
retract the
will happen.
gear. But once you're airborne, like in the Seminole, and the strut extends, it separates that contact, opening the circuit and allowing you to bring up the gear. Because one of my students was testing it. We don't even test it on the Seminole because you're not supposed to test it, just in case you're underneath the wing and you test it, and it retracts, you'd be underneath it. So I'm sorry, that was my bad. That was a horrible sentence for this week. I just could not figure out. Like I said, on the paper, the sentence made sense, but you got it though. So I apologize for my bad sentence, but you definitely
Oh,
got
no.
that, Tommy.
It was really good. I enjoyed that one.
That was bad. That was bad on my part. That was one of my worst. I think that's my worst one. I usually have a really good sentence and word. The squat switch was good, just not the sentence. The sentence was horrible. All right, with that though, that was a good. We both got it, so I guess we're not stumped. We did good. We actually.
Yeah, this is a good one
those
this week.
words. Yeah. But the next thing is going to be our new segment. This is our second one. We are talking about the safety stand down segment, where we talk about accidents and incidents in history that have led to the development and formation of the aviation industry, if you will, or transportation industry. It's not just going to be airplanes. It's just, it starts off with airplanes, and we'll go back and do different forms of transportation as well. But today we are talking about, and this is a pretty famous one. This happened back in June 30th of 1956 with TWA 2 and United 718. This is one of the first major airline accidents. There were some leading up to it, but this was one of the first ones where change actually occurred of it. So back on June 30th in 1956, both aircraft departed from Los Angeles International, LAX. Trans World Airlines, or TWT, was a Lockheed Constellation and was headed to Kansas City, Missouri. And United 718 was a Douglas DC-7 headed to Chicago. They both departed only about 3 minutes apart and planned to be crossing paths near the Grand Canyon about 2,000 feet apart. So before radar and such, the way it worked is the airplanes would communicate to company dispatchers, and then company dispatchers would talk to like Los Angeles Center Air Traffic Control. The air traffic controllers were not directly in communication with the airplanes. There was no radar at the time. It was non-radar. That technology had not been necessarily implemented because obviously during World War II and World War I is at the Battle of Britain is where they first started implementing radar, but it hadn't been implemented in service in the United States yet. So a lot of times it was non-radar procedures, which just basically meant you told air traffic control, I'm going to be at this point, at this time, at this altitude based off calculations. And then they would look at the other airplanes' altitudes, calculations, or estimated time of arrival and altitude, and make sure you guys weren't going to be at the same point at the same time. Usually, as long as this, and we still do it when we go out of the ocean and we do orca stuff, we have to pick a specific altitude going one direction, and we're the only ones allowed at that altitude and our position at any given point to prevent us from running into each other. Okay. And obviously we'll see why here in a second. Now, United 718 maintained planned altitude of 21,000 feet. The TWA-2 requested 21,000 or 1,000 feet on top for turbulence until they could make 21,000. So Los Angeles Center told TWA-2, sorry, we can't do 21,000 because United 718 is going to be over the same fix at 21,000 feet. So we can't do 21,000 feet. So then TWA2 requests or goes through their dispatcher and requests that they get 1,000 on top, which means VFR on top by 1,000 feet. So they maintain at least 1,000 feet. So above clouds. So Los Angeles tells TWA2 to maintain at least 1,000 feet on top and advises of United 718 and position estimate and time. So he advises 1,000 feet on top because he clears them because he says at least 1,000 feet, which would include 21,000 feet. But in the after action report or the incident report, he stated the reason that he cleared TWA2 up to that level is because he also informed him of United 718 being at the same at 21,000 feet over the same fix at the same time. So TWA last reports to Las Vegas company radio that they passed Lake Mojave at 21,000 feet, estimated to hit the Painted Desert Line, which is a navigational waypoint, at 10:31, the same time and altitude as United 718 reported to their company radio. So they both, and this is the problem, is air traffic control wasn't on with both of them. They communicate to one another, basically, to their own company. And so United 718 reported to their company that they would be over the Painted Desert Line at 10:31, their local time, or whatever, or Zulu, 10:31 at 21,000 feet at the Desert Painted Line. And TWA2 reported the same thing to their company dispatcher in Las Vegas. But because they're not talking to each other and weren't on one air traffic control frequency, they had no idea that they were on a collision course. At 10:31 Zulu, or whatever the local time was, radio transmission was heard over Salt Lake Center. It said, Salt Lake Center, United 718, we are going in. And that was the last known transmission of United. And TW2, that was their last position report. So after no position report went out from either aircraft, missing aircraft alert went out, and a Grand Canyon sightseeing pilot who was flying the day before remember seeing smoke in the canyon, and the next day went back with his plane and found the wreckage of the TWA plane. He saw the Constellation, the iconic tail, sitting in the Grand Canyon, and then he went back the next day again and found the DC-7 of United 718. Nobody survived that crash. They collided midair and ended up crashing uncontrollably into the Grand Canyon, killing all 128 people on board. Now, the TWA flight plan called for a 19,000-foot altitude, and TWA requested its company radio to obtain 21,000 feet, like I said, IFR from Los Angeles Center, and that was denied. But then it was later approved, like I said, because the controller thought it was safe because he had advised the company to tell TWA2 about the other airplane. So air traffic control at the time only had responsibility for separation for IFR flights, and when TW2 made its amended request for 1,000 on top, he was VFR clearance. Nowadays, VFR on top is a VFR clearance, but can also be requested from IFR, but technically it's still VFR. The assumption was that the plane should see and avoid one another. Well, technically, VFR United 718 was IFR, so technically TWA should have saw and avoided 718. The last position report by each flight indicated that both were at 21,000 feet and estimated the Painted Desert Line at 10:31. The Salt Lake City controller had both position reports at approximately 10:13, so only 20-ish minutes, maybe 18 minutes before the flights were supposed to hit, at which time the flights were both in uncontrolled airspace on direct routes. Traffic control services were not provided in the uncontrolled airspace, and according to air traffic control policies and procedures at the time, the Salt Lake controller was not required to issue traffic information. The controller did not take the option of voluntarily issuing traffic information in this case. So he just assumed that they knew that they were to see and avoid because they were on direct routing, which was VFR, out of uncontrolled airspace. So at the time, there were several cumulus buildups extending above the flight level that existed, and one was near the Grand Canyon Valley, and there were north and northeast in the area of the collision. The collision occurred at approximately 10:31 in visual flight weather, about 21,000 feet under visual flight rule conditions. I'm sorry, I already stated that. But the pilots didn't see each other in time to avoid the collision. The CBA, or the Civil Board, or CAB, excuse me, Civil Aviation Board, or Aeronautics Board, which is basically FAA, but back then, stated that it's not possible to determine why the pilots did not see each other, but the evidence suggests that it resulted from any one of the combination of the following factors: intervening clouds and reducing time for visual separation, which is kind of the leading theory, is that they popped out of a cloud, they were deviating, but popped out of a cloud, and then there was TWA2. Visual limitations due to cockpit visibility and preoccupation with normal cockpit duties. That happens. There's a lot of blind spots in our flight decks. The windows it's not a 360-degree view all around. It's very limited. And back then, obviously, they didn't have TCAS or transponders. Preoccupation with matters unrelated to cockpit duties, such as attempting to provide passengers with a more scenic view of the Grand Canyon area. I have heard that theory is they deviated off course to give a view of the Grand Canyon, which was a normal thing to do back then. It was part of part of the experience, but we don't do that anymore. Physiological limits to human vision, reducing the time opportunity to avoid the other aircraft, and insufficiency of the en route air traffic advisory information due to inadequacy of facilities and lack of personnel in air traffic control. So, in the years since this accident, and this is kind of what has come of it and why we're talking about it, in the years since of 1956, the Federal Aviation Agency or Administration has been created, and there have been broad sweeping changes to air traffic regulations. In 1956, air traffic regulations were contained in the CAR, or Civil Air Regulations, Part 60, and then in 1964, the FAA completed its codification of previous aviation regulatory issuances for the FARs that we know now, or Title 14 of the CFR, Subchapter F, Air Traffic and General Operating Rules, which contains the current air traffic regulations. At the time, the accident too, President Eisenhower signed the Airways Modernization Act in August of 1957, almost a year later, whose purpose was to develop and modernize the national system of navigation and air traffic control facilities to serve the present and future needs of civil military aviation. And the CAA's appropriations grew as the process of modernizing airways facilities and equipment proceeded. So, long-winded. This is all from the FAA. This is from FAA.gov. That's why it's so long-winded. And I was reading from it because I just want to make sure I get the facts right. But basically, this just modernized our air traffic control system to what we know today. At the time, it was kind of lacking. It was well behind. Like, the advances in aircraft, like, they were getting faster. They were able to fly farther, faster, higher. But air traffic control was not keeping up with that level of technology and was falling behind, and it wasn't being funded properly. So now, with the Authorization Act or Modernization Act that President Eisenhower has signed, now we're seeing an advancement of air traffic control technology and understanding that air traffic control is more important to the safety of airplanes, especially airliners flying through the sky. So, what do you think, Tommy? Did you know all about this accident? I've heard about it before.
I've heard about the accident before. I actually saw this specific accident on Airline Disasters. It was one of their featured.
Yeah,
And
it's free on YouTube if you guys want to go look at it.
yeah,
Completely
it's
free.
kind of interesting too because United was just going about their business. Now, this was what was depicted in the TV show.
Hmm.
So I understand they try and get 100% historical accuracy on what happened.
Yeah, but there's no
But
black boxes or CVRs at this time.
yeah, there's nothing. And the Connie was the pinnacle at that time. I
Yeah.
mean,
Hmm.
if you could afford a ticket on the Connie, you were moving. And what was the
Yeah.
cruise speed on that thing? Like 160 knots or something like that?
It was fast. Yeah, and up to
Yeah, you know,
21,000
for
it was
the day, you're
pressurized too.
whipping.
Yeah.
And the way it was depicted was TWA2 did appear from clouds. Like the way you would see it on the TV, that the
Hmm.
aircraft was ascending through clouds. And then next
Okay.
thing you know, boom, there they were at the painted line.
Yeah, but the DC, if I remember correctly, the DC-7 ran into the tail of the Connie,
Mhm.
right? United. So it's like they were maneuvering around clouds, and one of them, I think it was probably TWA, was trying to give them a better view of the Grand Canyon. It was slightly off
It
course.
is, and kind of hard to do on a webcam and this 1D.
Yeah.
But here's going TWA, and United was kind of like this.
Yeah. So without any real flight data. That's why it says it's probable causes, but without any real flight data or cockpit voice recorders, there was no way for them to truly know what happened up there. They could only make speculations. But long story short, they shouldn't have been over the same point at the same time at the same altitude.
Mhm.
And that was the grave mistake, was the inadequacy of air traffic control. I personally would put it more on air traffic control regulations at the time, not requiring for them to say something. Like, if they're at the same, even if they're in uncontrolled airspace, you need to say something because they're going to be over the same point at the same time, same altitude.
Exactly. And
Now,
I'm surprised that even at that point, we did have the technology at that time for a Unicom.
well,
There.
not as high powered as it is now. They were probably out of range. That's probably why it was non-controlled, to be completely honest. The airspace, it wasn't, the facilities, air traffic control wasn't as developed as it is now. Like, Unicom might have not have been a thing at the time. They were still using HF radios, and the line of sight was limited. And that's largely why
Okay, I see what you're
non-controlled.
saying. Line of sight
Yeah,
HF as opposed to the VHF.
Well, not HF is not line of sight. HF is bouncing stuff off the atmosphere,
Hmm.
like AM radio. But yeah, the VHF frequencies used to communicate with company and stuff like that is line of sight, and also based off power of the transmitter. Nowadays, we could get up and I can hear stuff from way away, but back then it wasn't like that. That's why they relied on company people to take reports and then call air traffic control over the phone, if that makes sense.
It
That's
does.
and that's
It
where
totally
that's
does.
where it comes from. It's there was a ton of limitations due to technology, and that's where air traffic control failed. In my opinion, in that sense, is they weren't being funded properly, and they were not keeping up with the speed and the advancements of the airliners at the time. But that's ultimately we got the FAA out of that, and the modernization of air traffic control as a result of that accident, which is unfortunate that it took the loss of 128 lives and two aircraft to do that. But that's like we talked about last week. Aviation is written in blood, and that's kind of like why we're talking about this. Is the industry that we see today? Everything that we do in the industry is as a result of someone dying in the past.
Right.
Everything that we do. TCAS, we'll get to that one. I don't want to spoil it, but that was the PSA 727 colliding with, was it the Cessna going into San Diego, LAX?
Couldn't see it.
Well, no TCAS. He just came out of nowhere and clipped the wing and
Hmm.
killed a bunch of people, both in the air and on the ground. But because of that, that resulted in TCAS. That's a mandatory thing that we have to have on airplanes. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that. That's further down the line. I think that's more closer to the 80s. We haven't even entered the jet age yet. But that's what the point I'm trying to get is these are important because everything that we do in the industry is because of accidents like TWA2 and United 718. But this is where it just starts. This is the first like major one, and it'll get more detailed as we go because starting in 1962, there's actual is when the NTSB starts filing reports. There's a whole database online on the FAA.gov that we'll be drawing from, but as it only goes back to 1962, so that's why we're kind of limited right
Hmm.
now. So. Well, with that, that was Safety Stand Down with TWA and United 718, and now it's time to move on to our live viewer Q&A. So we'll pull up our chat here, and we got a couple here. Let's see, a lot of fans of Tommy in there. Let's see, Fly with Caden. Hey, Caden, how's it going? He's asking, what do I drive? Currently, I drive a 2017 Chevy Cruze LS, not the base. Well, actually, no, I think that is the base model. Excuse me. Sorry, I forgot to breathe. I was getting so excited over my sedan. It's a 2017 Chevy Cruze. Bought it new back in 2017 in Schaumburg, Illinois, after my 10-year-old Pontiac or 15-year-old, no, 10-year-old Pontiac Vibe. Its transmission gave out right before I went to training with Honvoy. So it's been my FO car. It's only got 43,000 miles on it. It's an awesome car. Just paid it off yesterday. So that is what I currently drive. Let's see what else here. A lot of good comments from Caden.
I think Caden looks like he was researching
He did,
while
yep.
we were discussing the
While we are
150.
doing that, what does it say? I've got the work background. I need a crash story now. Tell Mr. Bill to tell another good crash story. It's not a crash story, but I mean that'll be next week. We're doing safety stand down every week. That's our new one. Let's see. Lando was pinning a bunch of stuff on my TikTok side, but I can't for some reason I can't see like when I type messages on TikTok. I can't see my message. I can't see what they're posting. But Caleb says hello. I love this comment. Caleb says I can't believe there's only 4 people on here. You guys are amazing. And love the podcast. So thank you, Caleb, for watching the podcast. Be sure to share it with your friends if you enjoy it. But that's all. I mean, that's all I got on my side for questions. If you have any, Tommy.
Joe said good morning. You know Joe, Michigan
Yeah,
Joe.
good. Michigan Joe.
Atomic. Yeah, Atomic. Just also know too, we do um safety stand down, and we've been dealing with aviation, but there are going to be rail and roadway
Yeah,
investigations and conversations that we're going to have in the future. The thing is, when Bill hits the nitty gritty, if you go to the FAA website and or the NTSB website specifically, and you
which is
ever,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah, the ones that are already now public record, look into one of their investigations. I mean, they're
Uh,
huge. They're a couple thousand pages, and at the end, it's usually, yeah, it's the end where they usually have their recommendation, which takes up another couple hundred
yeah. It's
pages.
a huge. I love diving into those. Those are usually pretty interesting because
Yeah,
a lot
'cause
has to do with human factors. So,
yeah, 'cause I do
but
the
that's
same thing, but we're not gonna discuss it on air. But I do the same thing with, declassified FBI, investigations and stuff like that.
Tommy's a conspiracy theorist. On next episode, no, I'm just kidding. Um, No, it's good to learn. Like I said, everything we do in this industry is because as a result of someone unfortunately dying in the industry. Because it is dangerous, but because of that, we've had a lot of safety improvements. So that's why we're generally discussing that for the foreseeable future. Because there are a lot of accidents. There's more and more as we go, especially as we get into the jet age. But with that being said, if you all want to join our Three Green Simulations group Discord, I have the QR code up here. Absolutely free to join. Never going to charge you to be there. We have a lot of cool features. You can become a content creator, get access to some of the content creating tools that Tommy and I use, as well as being able to promote yourself on the server to help grow your content and page. It's a free application. Don't have to pay anything to do it. All we do is just verify that you are in fact a content creator, and not a bot or just somebody to trying to advertise their t-shirt company or whatever, and then we give you the content creator role if that's something that you'd like to do. Also a great way to get a hold of Tommy and I. We are on there daily. You guys can ping us, ask us questions directly, come game with us. Tommy and I love gaming with you, but it's all there in the Three Green Simulations group. If you're listening to this and you can't see the QR code, that is correct because you can't hear a QR code. So just go to our link in our bio, on either of our or any of our social media, and in there will be a link to the Discord to get you in for free. So be sure to check that out. Now, moving on to the meat and potatoes of our podcast today. Kind of a simple discussion topic, but actually kind of important. This episode is called Blanket or Charger. And that's the idea is, are you choosing a blanket or charger to bring with you on a road trip? But we are talking about the most important items to bring, what we think are the most important items to bring on a road trip. Tommy and I talked about it. Was it episode 18 was plane, train, or can't say it. Sorry. Wings, rails, or wings, rails, or wheels. Right.
Yep.
We discussed what the future of travel was going to be for the United States. And we kind of grossly landed on the driving, because I personally prefer driving to flying. That's just because I fly every week to go to work. But that being said, we're talking about road trip stuff this week. So it's a good topic, especially because I just took an 8-hour middle of the night drive from Chicago to my hometown to come home after work. It's kind of a pertinent topic. So Tommy, we'll go through, but your number one, what is your number one item that you would bring? Like, if obviously car doesn't count, like vehicle and standard features in a vehicle don't count. So like radios, if your car, like, sometimes the dealer includes jumper cables, that's not included. But what's the number one piece of equipment that doesn't come with your car that you would say to bring on a road trip that you would bring?
Honestly, and then this will make total sense to you. I actually have a pretty extensive first aid kit.
Okay, that makes sense. What do you put in your first aid kit? Like, do you go like full trauma bag, or what type
Not
of first
full,
aid kit would
because
you bring?
some of the stuff I can personally buy it, but it's like super expensive. Like, um, before I
AED,
retired, I did
defibrillator.
have Quick Clot and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
But mainly, yeah, just big bulky stuff. Um, I could do amazing things with just bandages and stuff like that. I don't need all the fancy stuff that a truck has to stabilize someone
Yeah.
or someone in my vehicle, if I'm still able to. God forbid something like that happens. But the first thing we do usually throw in there, and it actually just kind of stays in there, is a
Yeah.
pretty extensive first aid kit.
And it's funny you mentioned that. My dad, I don't know if he kept it, but when my brother and I were in high school, we rocking the minivan, but we had a pretty extensive first aid kit from Sam's. That thing was serious. Like, it had
Hmm.
like gauze, it had shears, had all sorts of like painkillers and like antiseptic stuff. Like, it was, and when I say painkillers, I mean like generic ibuprofen, not like the good stuff like hydrocodone. But it's just it was a huge kit, and it took up a lot of our storage underneath the seats. But it was good. I mean, we used it for years. It was a good. Obviously, the medicine, once it was expired, we threw it out. But it was a decent medical kit.
Hmm.
So in terms of safety, I would agree with you. But for me, my number one thing that I would bring on a road trip, like first thing, I agree with you. First aid is part of that, but my first one, why am I coughing today? Is an atlas, like an
Okay.
actual atlas. I have one,
Mhm.
my 2024 one. Actually, I may need to update it. It might be 23, but I have a vehicle atlas. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but it's in the because we normally road trip in her SUV. It sits in the behind her chair, and I have an atlas, and I regularly pull it out and practice my navigation skills using an atlas because it's not easy. If you don't know how to use it, it's not easy, but it's good to have in case of like today. I forgot to. I didn't even mention it. Today we're having that huge geomagnetic storm from the sun.
Mhm.
Did you see that? So stuff like GPS, there should be GPS interference, all sorts of stuff. It's not like sci-fi conspiracy theory. It's actually happening. People as far south as me were seeing northern lights last night. Not me, but just north of the city because it was too bright where I'm at. But like, so if you lose GPS, how are you going to navigate? It's one thing to follow signs, but how are you going to navigate? Use your atlas. So that'd probably be my number one thing to bring is atlas. I think number two would probably be the first aid kit.
And you
We have a.
see, when you said not this, that, and the other thing, uh, my 2023 Ram McNally, the two of them, one's in my car, one's in hers. I just take it for granted that it's there.
What is it?
Yeah.
What did you say?
The United States map, the Rand McNally United States map. Not exactly an atlas, but it is a map book of all 50 states, the interstate system, all that stuff.
Oh, okay. Who did you just say with for what's the brand? You said it like I should know
Rand,
what it is.
yeah, Rand McNally.
I have no idea what that is. Is that like a
Just a
is
map
it
maker. Just
okay?
a corporate
Oh,
map maker. That's all. Nothing fancy.
okay. Because you said it, and I was like, wait, that's not the guy that made America. Because America, that's why we called America is based off the cartographer who made it. Verzano, the Verzano Bridge
Mm.
in Lower Manhattan was named after him. So it's like Verzano Americano or something. He was the person that first mapped the United States, and that's why we're called the United States of America. That's why when you said that, I was like, is this somebody I'm supposed to know? Because I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, so that's your number two. My number two would be the first aid kit. I guess it should probably be number one. But like, if I don't know where I'm going, my thing is if I don't know how to navigate myself to a help facility, the first aid is a moot point. In my opinion, that's just me. Like, get the first aid, everything set up, okay, but now I don't know where to go. So I would say one or two would have to be interchangeable. I would say first aid kit, like, and a way to navigate. So those two things.
Yeah, yeah, I
I
could
would
see
say I would
that,
say
but
either or. I would say either or. Um, what else are you bringing? So like my wife and I, we make a survival kit, right? Because we travel across like different climates and stuff like that. So we have the first aid kit. We have the atlas. Another thing that we bring is cold weather gear. So we just bring basically blankets, and we have like I think they're thermal, like the little ones, the ones that
Mhm.
fold up real tiny, the thermal and the what was it called? Just like a sweater, just like a light sweater, just in case. I want to say our old one, we had a big enough, our old SUV, we even put like an air mattress in there, just in case we had to like camp out in the car. I want to say that was our old one. But anyway, so I would say probably number three is like cold weather gear is something I would probably bring.
We do the same thing, except it's a little bit more seasonal. Because think about it, if you're sitting in the crew room, right, and you're
Hmm.
a couple hours before your showtime, what are you looking at?
The inside of my eyelids. I don't know what the I
Yeah,
don't know what the question is. I'm
you're
sleeping.
checking your weather, right?
Okay.
You
Yeah.
always check your weather. We do that too. Like we'll for our trip down south in a couple weeks, about 3 or 4 days before we're actually going to leave, I start checking the weather, and that's when, and we'll bring basically the same thing, like hoodies will be stowed back there somewhere, and for some reason, the better half in her car, because when we do
Hmm.
go long distance driving, we use her car
Yeah.
because her car was built for that.
It's the Subaru.
Yep. And uh we always have blankets back there anyway.
Okay,
She
that's a fair point. But my point is though, you have warm weather. You have something to fight the elements, right? Some
Yeah,
sort of clothing,
yeah.
some sort of
There's usually
additional.
ponchos as well.
Yeah, I would say anything to keep dry. Like the big thing, this was huge in El Paso when we used to road trip. A lot of people don't realize how cold the desert gets in the middle of the night. There's nothing
Mhm.
retaining the heat. So, especially in the middle of winter, it would get down to near zero out, and people would freeze to death in the desert. So that's something that we would always bring to when we were road tripping when I was younger with my parents, is having some sort of warm clothing or other. So that would, I would say, is probably number three. Right, because you said first aid, Atlas, probably just won't like seasonal clothing, something that to help us, maintain body temperature. There we go. Versus clothing,
Hmm.
but something to maintain body temperature. I think my fourth, I'm gonna go top five. So I think my fourth one will be either jumper cables, and I know I said excluding those. I have a portable jumper where we don't need another car to jump. We charge it before every road trip, and it's good for like days. And so if we ever have a trouble starting our car in the middle of nowhere, you just pull that bad boy out and hit the button, you hook it up, hit the button, and it jump starts your car. Or it also doubles as a flashlight and also as a generator to charge your phone if you need to make an emergency call.
We got the
That's what
same
it's.
one. We got the
Oh,
same
really?
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, mine's like 100. I got it a couple years ago. It was like $100 at AutoZone. Is the one I got.
I probably got the same
Super,
exact one.
probably at the time I was still a regional FO, so I was, like, oh my god, $100. And so, but it was worth it though, because my wife, her old SUV at the time, was having trouble starting in the morning, and so I was like, I'm just gonna get you this just in case. And we, like I said, we still use it, same one. We just charge it up before every road trip, put it in the back with the wheel, and we're on our way. So that way, like I said, if we're in the middle of nowhere, we don't have to rely on somebody to come and jump us.
Yep.
But with that being said, I always carry in my car a set of jumper cables just in case I need to jump somebody else, because it never fails. Someone leaves their lights on at the airport, and when they're gone for 2 weeks, come back, there's batteries dead. I've had to jump people in my uniform. That sounded bad. Jump people's cars, help them jump their cars in uniform after getting back home from a trip because their cars are dead. So once again, not included in the whole car, but I always carry a thing of jumper cables. So would you
We
rate
have
that as
that and a small toolbox.
small toolbox? So would you rank that as number four? Would you say that'd be a reasonable
That would be
four?
number
Is that
4 for us. Yeah,
before? All right, here we go, Tommy. Top five, but what's the last for you? What would be the last item of the five there that you'd bring with you on a road trip?
that unconscious cat behind me. No, I'm only kidding.
That's a tactical cat, man. You can throw that thing at stuff and
Yeah, man, just
kill it. Just
dunk her in
cat
a
pie.
bucket of water and send her going. Uh,
Uh,
the other thing that we do, now we already started preparing that.
for the apocalypse.
Yep, and the zombie apocalypse, and we already started preparing, going on rides like down to see my parents and
Yeah.
to see
Hmm.
Kim's daughter and daughter-in-law in Florida. We
Yeah.
already anticipated bringing the boys with us, so Kim has already started with a small Tupperware with things that possibly you could need for children. Now, we're not keeping food in the trunk of her car.
I
That's
would say
actually going to
yeah.
be made fresh by her, and that goes in the small cooler we have, and because she actually makes baby food when they're here. Um, but things that would be specific for the little people, like extra
Okay.
blankets, extra clothes, and it doesn't stay in the car; it comes up in the house, and we just pack it up.
Okay. Okay, but you're not okay. So you're not all. I'm just talking about like if it's you and Kim, so adult stuff,
Oh,
because it's
just adult stuff.
yeah, because I mean
Um,
you're not always gonna be road tripping with the grandkids, so
believe it or
like
not, our cooler is one that is a necessity for us because there are
mhm.
certain foods that we get down south, and I actually buy dry ice and we bring them back home with us because we can't get them up here. Believe it or not, unless we order it on the internet. So that's one. It kind of, yeah, our cooler.
Cooler. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
gonna one up you. Ready? This number five. One thing you forgot: phone charger. Because believe it or not,
you're
that's
right. I
it's
did
a
totally forget that
it's
because I'm so spoiled
it's in
because
the
they're
name.
always in there.
It's
They're
in the
always
name.
in.
Blanket or charger. But no, and the reason I say that, and this is the stupidest thing. So when I was driving down from Chicago this last week, right, I go to plug in my phone, and the iPhone 14 is a USB-C to whatever the iPhone Lightning charger thing is. It's not USB-C. Well, what's even worse is I was driving this Kia Forte, which is a nice car. It was like brand new, the rental car, but it doesn't have USB-C. It goes USB-A to the Lightning connector. So guess what? I had no
Oh,
way to charge my phone at all. So, and my phone was already half dead because I had been flying all morning. I had been waiting a couple hours to figure out what I was doing, so my phone hadn't been charged. So one of the things I had to do is stop in the middle of in the middle of the night somewhere at a gas station. I literally, as I was driving, took off my epaulets, right? Took off my wings, hid my badge, and when I got out, put on a pullover, walked into the gas station. It was $25. It's a freaking scam, but I needed it. It was a cigarette lighter converter for USB-C type
Hmm.
cords. It was a scam, but I needed it because my phone was about ready to die. But I would bring a phone charger. That's the last, I think, number 5, because there's so much you can do through your phone that if your phone dies, you're kind of SOL for a lot of things.
Right. And you
So
know what? It's funny because I literally just took that for granted. Because in my car right
yeah,
now, there's a
yeah, I
Droid
have a cord.
and
Yep,
iPhone charger in my car
yep.
right now. Her
I
car,
just have a cord.
same thing.
Yep, I just have a car. I just have a cord that sits. It's my car cord.
Yep.
It sits in my car, and that's where it stays. So yeah, so top 5 for me would be Atlas, would be first aid kit, blankets, jump box or jump starter where you don't need jumper cables, and a phone charger. And Tommy's was first aid kit, uh, map. Was it the second one?
A map book. Yeah, map book.
Yeah, map book, warm or body retaining clothing, right?
Hmm.
And what was your fourth one? I can't remember what your fourth one was. I lost it already. It was after that. It was because
Yeah,
I
you and
did,
me both, believe it or not.
and then the fifth one you said cooler. Um,
Yep.
what was your
What
fourth
the
one?
hell was my? That's bad, bro. That's bad.
I
We spoke
lost
about
it.
this 10 minutes ago, and I just
Yeah, because I should have been writing it down because I said map, first aid kit, blankets, jump box, and oh, maybe it was jump box. Maybe we both said jump box. That's probably what it
we
was.
did both say jump box,
Yeah,
and
and then you
the
said
only
cooler.
difference was I have a small toolkit.
Yeah,
That's the
toolkit.
only difference.
And also, a good point to the cooler though is because you don't want to store like dry food and stuff because it'll go bad because the car gets hot and stuff. And plus, there's
Mhm.
no way for you to actually make dry food. But cooler is good too. If I had to do a number 6, I would say cooler because then you can store it with food and drinks and water and food because the rules of threes, right? For survival, humans can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without heat, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Those are like the order of things that you have
Mhm.
if you're surviving what you need. So obviously, don't dunk your head longer than 3 minutes underneath the water. For 3 hours without heat, you got to find some sort of heat source, so like blankets or starting a fire. And then water is super important because you'll dehydrate and die in 3 days if you don't drink enough water. And then 3 weeks, most bodies can handle. Like me, based off how much body fat I have, I'm probably good for a couple years without eating.
Yeah,
But
you and me both, man.
yeah,
I'm good.
so so I don't know about you. I'm a huge fan of Naked and Afraid XL, the Discovery Plus show where they literally just send them out there in the middle of nowhere and without anything except for a couple of tools and say survive for 40 days in the middle of like these different environments. I don't know if you've ever watched it. It is an awesome show to watch.
I've watched, here and there.
Yeah, so it's the new season comes out I think this Sunday, which my wife and I have been dying for a new season. But that's where I got that from. So based off those, like food is a necessity. So I
Mhm.
would say a cooler would probably be my 6th thing that I would bring as well. So
Yeah, and
not too far off.
we did it. Um, I forget which time it was when we went down there because we try to get down there like once a quarter.
Hmm.
But
Oh, you mean Georgia?
yeah, and
Hmm.
my uncle was asking Kim about Kabasi, and
Bossy.
yeah, yeah, they can't get it. They could get the prepackaged like Johnsonville stuff down there, but they can't get fresh from like the mom and papa store.
Yeah.
Hence, 3 rings of Kabasi in a 40-gallon cooler or 48-gallon cooler. I don't
I
know.
that's not what I would bring in a cooler. I'd fill up with like water and like
Oh,
granola
it's all in
bars
there,
and
Chiefs.
stuff.
Everything's on ice. Got our cooler is 48-gallon. We can fit some stuff.
Where the hell do you put that? Oh,
Normally,
it's in the Subaru,
it's in
right?
the
The
Subaru.
hatchback.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say because there's no way that fits in your car. I've seen
Well,
your
it
car.
fits in the back seat with absolutely nothing else. Like, but it
That's
fits. If we put it long ways in her car, it fits
yeah.
absolutely fine. There's
And you
still
guys have
room
enough
actually in
like
front of.
for like luggage and stuff too.
Believe it or not, our luggage is a couple of backpacks. We do have like one suitcase.
What?
Yeah, we
You guys,
travel
well,
so
do you guys
light.
do? But do you guys do laundry where you're
Yeah,
at? Is
we
that
do
how you
laundry
guys?
at my mother
Okay.
and father's
See,
house.
yeah. See, we don't do that. Well, we would do that if we were going to like my mom and dad's place in El Paso. But like for example, going on a cruise, or I mean, I guess the cruise you can launder your stuff, but
Yeah, but you're
going
on a
like
cruise. Would
trips,
you wanna? I
no.
know I
I mean,
wouldn't.
my wife. Yeah, my wife and I, and the thing is, and I thought it was ridiculous, but you need a big suitcase for cruising because you wear at least 2 outfits a day. Because, or at least my wife and I do, because we go to dinner, we go to the dining room every night on a
Mhm.
cruise. So we have our day clothes and then our night clothes, and then if we're swimming, we have day swim and night clothes. So you end up packing a lot. That's why when you said a backpack, I'm like, you have to be doing laundry. There's no way.
Yeah, if
But
we're
okay,
when
okay. Before
we're
we go too
with
much on a
family, yeah.
tangent, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
We do have luggage, and even with the cooler, both of our bags will fit in the car, no problem. But for the most
Interesting.
part, yeah, whenever we go away, we're always with family. So the washer and dryer are always accessible to us. So we don't even think
Nice.
about it.
Nice. Okay. So before I go too off, we're starting to go down travel now. But to recap, so number one for me, or my top 5 things to bring on a road trip when you're driving, are going to be a map book or a atlas, a first aid kit, blankets to maintain, or some sort of clothing to maintain either your cooling or body heat. Depending on which climate you're in, a jump box, or basically a portable jump start for your car and slash generator, and phone charger for the car. Tommy's was first aid kit, atlas, uh, body temperature maintaining either clothing or blankets, depending on the climate, jump box, and cooler.
Hmm.
Not bad. I think those are pretty solid across the board. I just obviously
Yeah,
different things because, like I said, food is just as essential as well. And the nice thing is, with as small as things are nowadays, as well as big cars have gotten as well, you could pretty much put everything. Like my wife and I jam pack our SUV every time we go. We road trip somewhere, which will be nice with a truck because like we can put more. So there's more cargo space. But
hmm,
I digress with that. But that will conclude our topic for this week. Something like I said, simple but a good discussion between the two of us about what our top 5, because not everybody has a top 5. And actually, let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, TikTok, or even listening to it. Just leave us a comment below, or send it or in our Discord. Let us know what you would bring, your top 5 items to bring on your road trip. We'd love to hear that. So that concludes episode number 20, blanket or charger, and we thank you all for joining us this week. If you enjoyed this week's show, please let us know by rating the show on the respective platform you are listening on. For Spotify users, at the top of the podcast page near the notification bell, hit the 3 dots and select Rate Show. For Apple Podcast users, scroll all the way to the bottom of the podcast page and give your rating and review. And if you're watching us live today and would like to review the show, please do us a favor and either go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts, or just Google Torque and Thrust Talk Show. You will see us. We are the top 25 results in the Google search. And Tommy and I, as of last December, we were number 58. So top 60 aviation / leisure podcasts in the world, according to Apple Podcasts. Because of my hiatus and other things from the podcast while I was moving houses, that has tumbled. So we're trying to get that rating back up. So if you truly did enjoy the show, please go to one of those platforms and rate us. We'd like to get ourselves back up to the ranks to have ourselves exposed to more people so people can come in and watch our content and the show. If you all want to stay up to date with us and the show, industry news, follow us on Twitter at Torque in Thrust Talk Show. So that's Torque, the letter N, Thrust TS. That's all on Twitter as well. If you'd like to save the show for on-the-go entertainment and news, follow and turn on podcasts for the talk show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Feel free to follow me and Tommy D on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok at Captain Bill Official, and Tommy is at Level Flight Simulations. Our next live show will be Saturday, so a week from today, Saturday, May 18th at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. And on behalf of the Torque and Thrust Talk Show, I am Bill.
I am Tommy.
And we hope you all have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week.